Good evening, and welcome to the Westfield Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission meeting for Monday, December 15th, 2025, starting at 7:34 p.m. Staff, if you could please confirm the presence of a quorum.
Mr. Bunkefist?
Present.
Mr. Horke?
Here.
Mr. Khan?
Present.
Dr. Keene?
Here.
Ms. Carlson?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Mooney?
Here.
Mr. Neal?
Present.
Mr. Woodard? We do have a quorum.
Do indeed have a quorum. Thank you very much. There are not any changes to announce for tonight's agenda, so we'll move to the approval of the previous meeting minutes from December 1st, 2025 for our regular meeting. If there are not any amendments, what will be the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to approve the December 1st meeting minutes.
Moved by Mr. McCarty. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bunkefist. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next will be to review the rules of procedure. Mr. Todd, I believe that honor goes to you this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Tonight is a workshop meeting, and for the item on the agenda, the department will introduce a petition stating when the item was last before the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission petitioner will then have an opportunity to discuss changes made to the ordinance using the issue list, I believe, as a guide for discussion this evening. Once discussion is finished, the department will summarize the final change or changes that are expected to be made prior to the petition returning to the board. So for rules of conduct this evening, for anyone in the audience, please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time, and if you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. And we would like to remind those attending virtually to please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thanks.
Thank you very much. There are no consent agenda items for tonight, so we will move to our sole workshop item for this evening, which is 2511-PUD-19, which is the Ironstone Plan Unit Development. Before we move to staff report and the developer presentation, I do want to note for members of the public that are here this evening. So typically, the second meeting of the month is a workshop meeting. It's much more collaborative. It's always happened after a public hearing, which happened not long ago. I'm sure some of you were here for that. This is not a back and forth discussion with the public that has occurred. However, you will have the opportunity through the entire process, if you have any thoughts or comments related to what you hear tonight or over this project. I know there'll be a couple more workshops on this in the future prior to it coming for approval. You'll be able to email that to planners@westfield.in.gov, and that comes to us, and we read all of those religiously. And so again, this is not a place to have a conversation. We'll be talking with the developer. We'll be answering, asking questions of them and the team and having a discussion kind of out in the open, but you'll be able to see everything, participate in everything except the discussion portion. But again, please make your voice heard if you so choose. With that, we will move to Mr. Todd for staff introduction and any comments he has before we move to our developer team.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. Again, for the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department, pinch hitting here for Weston Rogers. The item before you this evening, as mentioned, is the Ironstone Plan Unit Development District request. The subject real estate is roughly 715 acres in size. As outlined on the screen above, the boundaries in this zoning request are generally northeast and northwest of Hortonville and southwest and northwest of the intersection of 6 Points Road and 206th Street. The proposed ordinance would permit a residential community with a mixed-use village center to be developed through the establishment of 4 districts. These districts include the Lakes, the Reserve, the Village, and the Horton Square mixed-use block, each with distinct architectural and site development standards. Public hearing for this item was held, as mentioned, at the November 3rd Plan Commission meeting. Since that time, the petitioner has completed an initial round of red line revisions and revised several exhibits per initial feedback received. The petitioner has also met with city staff on multiple occasions to discuss infrastructure planning, architectural standards, and site development standards. This project remains under review and will continue to be refined before returning back to the Planning Commission for additional discussion in January. Tonight, this item is scheduled for its first workshop discussion. John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger is here to present additional information this evening and provide an update on this item. Both the petitioner and staff are available to answer any questions should you have any for us. Thanks.
Very good. Mr. Dobashewitz, the floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you. For the record, John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, Platinum Properties Management Company. Paul Rio, president of Platinum Properties, is here, as well as Jim Schinnemer, attorney with our office, and other members of our development team. I wanted to kind of lay out how we'd like to go through information tonight and talk to Mike about that just as we were walking in. And we have John Nail here this evening, and John has agreed that to kind of go through the process of the discussion with regard to road improvements and kind of walk the Plan Commission through that, answer any preliminary questions you might have. So we want to use his time first because he may want to exit after that discussion and save a little bit of time. But after that, I wanted to review with the Plan Commission updated and revised exhibits. Hopefully that'll address some of the questions that you had from the first Plan Commission meeting, as well as other questions we had. Talk briefly about our interaction with joining neighbors in terms of buffers and transitions adjacent to certain properties, and then open it up for questions and comments from the Plan Commission. We do anticipate that this would be our first of either 2 or 3 workshop meetings before we come back to the full Plan Commission seeking its recommendation. That next meeting, I believe, would occur on January the 20th. With that, I'll turn the mic over to Mr. Nail, with the exhibit that I handed out at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Nail, good evening.
Good evening. For the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. We've had quite a few discussions. I know there's been concerns from council members mainly, who I've spoken with, had some concerns about infrastructure improvements related to this project, some improvements that they feel are necessary to help support this project if it were to be approved. So my team and I looked at this very closely. I do want to walk through with the group kind of the projects that we have planned, as well as the projects we would oversee in advance of this project and its full build out. So with that said, you can see the map that developer prepared, and on the kind of south end of that map, there are 2 dots, kind of, I'm actually colorblind, but grayish, I guess. I don't know, but that could not be, maybe it's not gray, but it's gray to me. Those are projects that are happening regardless of Ironstone. These are projects that are in design currently. They're on our capital improvement plan. And specifically, those projects are a roundabout at 191st, 193rd, and Horton. In other words, 191st Street actually swings to the north as it approaches Springville, and Horton will tee in at a new roundabout just west of the West Fork Whiskey property. And then additionally with that project, there will be a roundabout there at 193rd, the entrance to Osborne Trails and Spring Mill Road to help support traffic flow. I think one of the bigger problems that we see currently, and some of the complaints that I get frequently, are related to folks traveling south on Horton Road wanting to make a left onto 191st Street. And especially when Grand Park is operating, the gaps are few on 191st Street. And so you get some queuing related to southbound Horton to eastbound 191st. So this project's in the works in our capital improvement plan. That will take care of that issue and make traffic flow much more smoothly east-west on 193rd to 191st, as well as Horton to eastbound 191st. So those are the 2 projects that are happening regardless. The other projects on this map we have identified as projects to help support some of the growth in this area. And I will call your attention to, we've essentially broken these out into priority levels. And those priorities can roughly match up with how this project would build out over time. I think it's important to understand we're not going to build this number of houses overnight. It does take quite a long time. And we've identified these priority 1 projects mainly to the south of Ironstone as ones we would look at doing very early in the process to help support some of that additional traffic. Those projects are 193rd and 6 Points Road, 199th and Horton, 206th and 6 Points Road, and then reconstructions of 6 Points and Horton. When we say reconstruction, I don't mean whole-scale widening to multiple lanes, but essentially both of those roads are old county roads that we've inherited over the years. They are maybe 19 feet wide at best. Typically, we'd like to see roadways that are 12-foot lanes, so 24 feet total. We would reconstruct those to provide new pavement, to widen out to a 12-foot lane, new striping, new stone shoulders. Things that don't necessarily support additional capacity, but it does improve safety measures, and it's really projects that really need to be done regardless. So those are the priority 1 projects we've identified. I'll move on to what we're calling priority 2, which really a trigger in our mind would be some of the commercial that could be coming through in the Hortonville area. And those are in the greenish color. So there'd be an intersection improvement at 206th and Horton, kind of in that commercial center, as well as reconstruction of 206th Street. Similar application here, reconstructed with new pavement, 2 12-foot lanes, et cetera. And then lastly, some of the priority 3 projects are really focused further north. We have heard some concerns about projects on State Road 38, some turn lanes that might be warranted on State Road 38 up here. And we would be kind of looking at those kind of towards the end to make sure that we are addressing the north side as well. So we do have cost estimates associated with all of these projects. I'm not going to get into the weeds unless you guys are really curious about that. But I will say that we've got what I feel is a pretty strong funding strategy related to how to pay for these improvements. And honestly, whether Ironstone happens or not, as additional residential growth occurs in this area, these are projects we're going to have to do. So I'll stop there and just take any questions that you may have at this time.
Any questions for Director Nail at this time related to this specific piece? Councilor McCarty.
We won't get too far into the weeds, but what's kind of an estimated ballpark for?
So we've got conservatively, all the projects I talked about is around 13 million in infrastructure improvements. And I will say, we try to start with these preliminary estimates very conservatively, so I think there are some opportunities for that number to come down.
Further questions for Director Nail? I have one related to, I think it's Horton over there to the right. You had said that there won't be any widening in that project. Is it ever anticipated that that would have to occur in the future? Or I guess what I kind of envision, again, the closest thing, it's a bad example, but the closest thing I can think of to this project is West Clay, and I don't think there was any widening in most of those roads that go through that area. Is that kind of contemplated that you think that it wouldn't need to happen in that? Yeah, I think
if we focus on the what we call the nodes or the intersections, I think that's where you really get the most bang for your buck. With respect to West Clay, nothing against our friends in Carmel, but if you look at Town Road, that was widened to a 4-lane boulevard section. I drive that frequently. I don't see enough vehicles on there to really warrant 4-lane boulevard. And what happens actually is you get speeding as a result because it's so wide, it's such a highway, you can drive a lot faster than you really should be going. So I would, as we look at it today, we don't foresee a wholesale widening of Horton.
Got it. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any questions before we let Director Nail get on with this evening? Seeing and hearing none. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the information. Mr. Dobashewitz, we'd love to have you back.
So just as a reminder, this slide is of the entire overall Ironstone development. It's a total of 765 acres, about 280 of which is here in the lakes. 40 of that 280 is the site here that's going to be dedicated over to Westfield Washington schools for their future use. And then the other two pieces are about 250 acres in the village, the centrally located area, a smaller area where Horton is, and I'll go to that slide in a minute, and then about 230 for the area which is identified as the reserve over here. This exhibit shows those three areas, lakes, the village, the reserve. The fourth area is the Horton Square mixed-use block. This mixed-use block here that you see in the peach color, that's approximately 7.5 acres, and there's a distinction there in that 7.5 acres of this block here that sits along the perimeter of the village in that location right here. If we look at this next map, this is a map that shows all the different lot types. There's 11 different lot types that are positioned throughout the development, and if you zoom in real closely, you'll see this is crosshatched. That's about 1.5 acres that's crosshatched there that could either be developed under the mixed-use format or the village format, depending on future use and intensity of that use block. If it shifts and leans towards the village area, that would bring down the amount of commercial and or multifamily that could go in that space. And I think we can leave it on that slide for a minute because I want to walk through a couple of the distinctions and a couple of the changes that took place. There was concern mentioned about the specificity in the ordinance about these different use blocks, and there was an allowance for those to be adjusted. The allowance has been eliminated with the exception of that one square that I just showed you that's 1.5 acres. So across 765 acres, save 1.5 acres, it's set in stone. These are the different use areas, and any change to that would have to come back as a legislative matter in front of the council. Another item that was discussed was the distribution of different lot types throughout the development, and those lot types have been locked down, and there's specificity added in that the lot types would be in substantial compliance with the lot distributions that you see here. Another primary thing, item with regard to the village, there were questions about people not wanting to see multifamily, and I think the perception was perhaps that because multifamily was permitted, it was permitted everywhere across the 765 acres. The only area, and the specificity in the ordinance is the only area that would allow a townhome use would be this area here along the Monon within the village area. The only area exclusively that would permit multifamily would be within that Horton Square mixed-use block. And when I say multifamily, there's specificity that we've added to the ordinance that it's not individual multifamily use. It has to be part of a mixed-use project. It's only, multifamily units are only permitted on the second floor and above, so you have to have that mix of uses. There's an exception to that rule in that there could be a building that would have a leasing office and amenities for the residents with the multifamily that could be on that first floor, but dwelling units have to be on the second or third floor above. And not, so what you're not going to end up with potentially is if there's no market for the commercial, you can't end up with a situation where there's a multifamily complex as we would typically see them today. Other areas along Tomlinson and sites throughout the community are exclusively multifamily. This development could not be that exclusive multifamily. We've also tightened up and drilled back down on the permitted number of dwelling units. We're still getting comments regarding that to tighten up from what's actually shown here to what's actually permitted under the ordinance. We do allow some flexibility in that number. We have to further tighten down the village area because we've finally gotten into greater engineering that's brought our numbers down. They've been brought down from about 2,300 dwellings across the entire acreage to closer to 2,000. When you look at the three different areas. And that's just a matter of forcing additional engineering onto the site to deliver something that's more specific and has the guarantees within the ordinance about what's being developed in which spaces. This is our trail plan. It's been revised modestly. We pulled these trails over to the right-of-way instead of through the school site to get them over to this corner of 206 and Horton Road. This dash line that sits here, it says by others, that's already in place today across the Monon Square frontage. Another piece of the puzzle that will be in place with the completion of the fire station is along the south edge here of 206. So there'll be connectivity of all areas of the development to get you to Hortonville proper, if you will, upon the initial stages of development. There's one other modification amongst this 14 miles of additional paths that you see here. It's right here. This path comes off Horton and goes due east and is positioned parallel to the power lines. We met with the Barretts, and the Barretts live on this parcel that's right here along our east perimeter, and they didn't want to see that trail just terminate into their property. And we agreed that we would cut that short of the property line, and one of two things. We'd either cut it short and tie it back into the street right here, and leave it available for a public pedestrian access easement that could be extended in the future. Or we'd take it, probably more likely, and turn it back into the development at a location, so it provides a loop for people so they're not stopping, wondering, should I continue east along the edge of the pipe, the power line easement, or do I have the ability to cut out back over into the development internally? So one of those two options will exist, and it won't terminate at the east property line. This next exhibit is just refinement of the amenities. A couple different things with regard to amenities. There is an exhibit that we added to Exhibit H that illustrates and outlines every different one of these common areas that we're proposing and specifies here's exactly what's in that space. Kind of provides a checklist for staff when they're reviewing it for development approval later on. We have committed and agreed to in the ordinance that amenities will be in substantial compliance with the illustrations. There's more pages of illustrations of amenities here than I think you've ever seen in any other development. And that's to provide a guarantee that these are the amenities that will be approved, and site improvement plans won't be approved unless they're in compliance with these. A change to that would, again, require a return trip to council. We don't anticipate a return trip, but again, a change would have to go to, so this level of amenities is what would be required within the overall development. There was another question about perhaps additional pools. That I think maybe the thought process was the only amenity with a pool is this area, Foundry Park. There's a pool and amenity facility down here at about $2 to $2.5 million of investment in that amenity facility. There's about $4.5 million of improvements on top of the ground. That Foundry Park, we've got a blow up of it. There it is. This Foundry Park is, again, 11 acres in size. I think I did this at the Plan Commission meeting beginning of November to give everyone a sense of scale. Was that the park here downtown, Grand Junction Park, is coincidentally, it's about 4.5 acres, or excuse me, 5.5. It's 5.5 acres, so this park is twice the size of that area that's wrapped by Park Street and Union and the apartments to the north, that would serve exclusively, is intended to serve exclusively for this neighborhood. You see a lot of improvements here that aren't locked down for the use exclusively of the neighbors. The pond, the paths, the other areas throughout the development are all open to the public. This isn't a you can't walk here if you don't live here event. It's likely that the pool house will be locked down for residents only, and then potentially the sport courts could be key card accessed in the future, but that's our only things that are restricted. So the public has access to all 14 miles of trails, all the public spaces that you see here, and the detail that's provided regarding those public spaces that you see here in item 7, the tie between the clubhouse and the commercial area, the mixed-use area rather. These other spaces are all programmed. It's not just a block that's colored green and says we might do something there. It's this is the design, this is the layout, this is what we reviewed for compliance before permits are issued for those individual spaces, and we file secondary construction approvals. This is a new slide. We had we provided a placeholder in the PUD, and we didn't talk about this at the last meeting because we didn't have this level of detail. The plan is for common metal fencing to be located, and this shows you where that metal fencing is located. And then you see the additional blue and green dots. This is exclusively residential signage and wayfinding throughout the development. This isn't commercial signage, it's just residential. And the dashed red line here along the 6 points frontage would be for a 4-board fence. But if we go and look at some of those details, this is the design detail for that metal fencing and columns along 206th Street primarily, and the north end of the development to mark the transition between different areas within the community. That same style of brick and stone columns carries throughout Foundry Park at the 4 corners of Foundry Park where you enter the site from the public walk. This will be an element that extends over the sidewalk. And then this design element that is similar to, but not identical to that same design vocabulary, if you will, is carried across. This would be at the lakes at the 2 entrances along 6 Points Road and the 1 entrance along 206. a detail regarding the fencing. This is all identifying where it would be in common areas and that the builder will develop. One of the other questions that we had from people was what kind of restrictions will there be with regard to fencing for people on their lots? The restriction would be for metal fencing, similar in character to this. There wouldn't be a situation where you'd have vinyl and wood fences and other things throughout the development. We would categorize the fence type permitted, and it would be similar to what's illustrated here. Another big question was regarding open space, and we provided another exhibit at the Plan Commission meeting. And this identifies where there's open space throughout the development. Typically, for underlying zoning classifications, the requirement in the UDO is anywhere from 8% to 15% of required open space. And proposed here is a minimum of 20% required throughout the development. This represents about 22%. It does not include the school facility. That school facility is not counted as open space. There's approximately 60 acres of open space in the lakes. And then you see the other two distribution elements across the site. The open space amenity here east of Horton Road is predominantly through the low-lying area. There's actually some flood zone in there, and it's wooded through this space. You'll see that in a minute in our tree preservation plan, but these are the areas of open space. The ordinance says open space shall be as illustrated in the concept plan. This is just a pull-up from the concept plan that helps us communicate effectively where there would be open space within the development rather than just relying upon people figuring that out looking at the concept plan. This next exhibit is tree preservation areas. And there's existing trees on the site predominantly east of Horton Road. That's the area I just talked about. All the trees within here will be preserved. There is a stand of trees that exists along the north perimeter of the real estate, and we're providing tree preservation along that north perimeter. And then there's a stand of trees that exist on the site here where this element that you see here is a stormwater detention element. I want to go back for a minute and look at the legend. As originally submitted along the perimeter of the site, where if you're next to the site in your AGSF1, the ag residential zoning classification of the ordinance, that there would be a 20-foot perimeter planting buffer. And after going back and looking at that, the plan was modified. It's rather than a 20-foot buffer, there's going to be a 40-foot buffer. And rather than planting shrubs within that buffer, there would be 3 additional trees. So the UDO would call for, when we're adjacent to AGSF1, the UDO would call for 8 trees and 10 shrubs in a 40-foot space. This plan proposes, our plan provides as a standard along that area, 3 additional trees, so there'd be 11 trees every 100 feet. That's every 100-foot segment. So approximately 1 every 9 feet, a tree planted. And that would include 4 evergreens, 4 shade trees, and then a choice between evergreen or shade trees across that 100-foot segment along the edge of the development. And so where you see the narrower areas where we're adjacent to parcels, everything you see along the perimeter of our site that's shaded in green would be that standard. And Paul and I met with some surrounding neighborhoods and individuals to come up with a plan for those individual spaces. If you see the space here identified as Area A, south and west of Area A, this area, is the Monon Corner subdivision. And B here is, coincidentally, Brooks is the name of the owner over here that we met with, and C here is Barrett, and they have their house fronts 214th Street. And first to look at Area A, there's a couple that lives here. I think it's the Shirleys. They had communicated us and to the Plan Commission a couple times. This plan is the first that these folks are seeing of this specific plan, because we sent out another plan, and that plan there were comments about that plan, and we wanted to make revisions to it before we showed the Plan Commission what we had come up with. If you look at this plan, previously the pond was in this area down here. Let me start out different spot. If everyone can see this shaded area underlying the imagery, so there's an existing tree stand that exists in this space, and you can see the shadow here from the trees. So within that space we had the pond, and then there was area of the trees that was preserved right over here in this east perimeter. And the property developed as Monon Corner was developed as a subdivision as part of the Chatham Hills development. And they have a 50-foot perimeter common area around the edge of their site that has a path within it. And you can see that path. It's the white line that comes along here. They've got enhanced plantings next to the Shirley's mound with evergreen trees as well as shade trees behind those. And then in here, there's a little bit of mounding with some additional trees along here. And then as you work north, the UDO would not require a buffer between two new neighborhoods. So this neighborhood and Mona Corner, a buffer would not be required. A buffer is required next to the Shirley, so I'll get in that in a minute. But the request was, can we modify the plan to come up with saving additional trees? And the ask was, can we save all the trees? And we're trying to position ourselves between not anything being required between the two neighborhoods and saving a good part of the trees. This layout that you see here saves approximately 50% of the existing trees that are on the site. You can see a stub street exists here, and we have to carry in the stub street, and then the street would head south, accommodate some homes there. We would provide a 50-foot common area along our south and west perimeter. This tree preservation, the square here is about 350-foot square, so that behind the Shirley's residence, there would be an area with trees preserved that's about 350-foot square, the width of their property, and then 350 feet back. And tree preservation in this area and tree preservation of the south. It's a little sparse through this area in the terms of existing trees, and we'll look for additional feedback from the neighbors on that space. We would have a 50-foot yard here where there's 50 foot on the other side. There's not any plantings proposed within that 50 feet because we've got trees already within the common area of the other development, and a requirement today because they're the first in. This site is zoned AGSF1 today. We wouldn't propose additional plantings in that space, and the reason that we cut it off right here is those lots start to turn back to the west here and widen out that common area, and you can see the dots and additional tree plantings that are in that space today, and there wasn't the need to be redundant in that area. We also took the pond and pushed it north of the trees. You can see the shadow from where the trees are, so that pond got pushed north. And then along the north perimeter of the Shirley's property, we are in agreement to provide a buffer that's identical to what they have to the south. So there would be mounding, evergreen trees of a variety they've identified, and shade trees of a variety they've identified along that north perimeter. Again, we haven't shared this illustration with them yet until now. Would expect to see perhaps additional feedback, but wanted to share with the Plan Commission this illustration. A couple of the other comments that the Shirleys and others had regarding this space was a concern about multifamily being in that area. As I indicated, multifamily is only permitted within that Horton Square use block. There was also comments in general about street lighting, and the UDO standards would apply. We're going to look at that and make sure and confirm that they include shielded downward directing lighting. That was what was requested. I believe that's what's in the UDO, but we're going to confirm that. If it's not in there, and we can come up with a fixture that does that, we'll commit to that lighting standard. Fencing, they wanted to see only metal fencing, and we've agreed to that. The pond, we moved to the north to preserve more trees. The mixed-use area is all within the Horton Square mixed-use block. From a design perspective, there wouldn't be any trails within that space. We can agree to that. There wouldn't be any trails in the plan you see there. And one other comment was a request to see only single-story homes on these adjacent lots, and that was something that we wouldn't agree to, that it could be a single-story house, a story and a half, or a typical two-story home on any one of the lots that are within that space. The next exhibit is here where I had indicated we met with the Brooks. Mr. Brooks and his wife live in the home that's positioned here. That home sits really far back on the lot. They're about another 1,500 feet before you get to Oak Ridge Road. Their driveway exits out onto Oak Ridge. And they had asked us if we could do a couple things, one of which is push the pond further to the west to provide more tree preservation, and we agreed to that. We agreed that the pond would be a minimum of 100 feet away from there where it was positioned at about 20 feet under the original plan. And then we agreed to a 75-foot minimum dimension for there to be tree preservation along that perimeter. We also have tree preservation in the space that's beyond that, that's here, but this illustration calls out that minimum of 75 feet of trees to be preserved. And this is the way the lots would be positioned on the area. And there was a small space in here, and they asked, can you plant some additional evergreen trees in here on the backs of these lots? Because that's their swimming pool right here. They've got another outbuilding, and we agreed to plant 10 additional evergreen trees. And then it opens up, and there's really a fence row along this edge. So north of that edge, there would be the 11 trees per 100 feet in a 40-foot wide space. That wraps the east perimeter, the north perimeter. This parcel right here is the Barretts. This is their south line. This is generally their east line, and this is their west line, and we have an illustration that we shared with them that is right here. This is the Barrett's home. This is an outbuilding. This is their residence, and they had indicated to us that they don't have a immediate plan, but wanted to install a swimming pool and wanted to maintain some privacy. There are some trees that are adjacent to their home to the west. You can see those trees here, the shadows of those. And we agreed, as you can see on this plan, that we would preserve those existing trees to the extent they're on our side of the property line. And we would add a 6-foot tall wood fence. This is the only place where that wood fence is, and it's based on their request, along that 325-foot segment that would provide that additional screening right at the, at 6 foot to their rear yard. This would be in addition to the 11 trees per 100, so we would save trees and we would add new trees on both sides of the fence to come up with that 11 per 100, both in saved trees and new plantings. And then north of that, you can see cross-hatched an area that's 100 feet in length, and that's north of the fence and south of the fence. And in addition to the 11 trees per 100, we would agree to plant 10 additional evergreen trees in that space. And I mentioned that it might need a little bit more room than that, so that if the trees were to bleed to the north and south in that space, that was something that we could agree to them at the time of planting regarding if when we actually went out there and staked it, they're like, hey, I'm not sure we can fit 22 trees in a 40 by 100 segment. Maybe we can shift some of those south or north, and we would be in agreement with that, because up here, there aren't any existing trees within that space along their western perimeter. And this is that note about the terminating the path to the west or tying it back into the internal street. So we'll either cut it back over here at the street, or we'll take it and turn it north between two lots and bring it back either north or south to address the concern that they had. That's my last slide that I wanted to share. There are numerous other adjustments we've made to the PUD in the red line version, but wanted to open it up to additional Plan Commission questions and comments as we move forward.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the level of detail. Okay, commissioners, I know there's a lot of writing, typing, looking, scrolling, in no particular order, however. Dr. Keene, you're up first.
Okay. John, I want to express appreciation for all the work that's been done to meet some of the residents' needs that surround this and everything, so it's a good job with that. The only thing that occurred to me at the initial presentation, still occurs to me, I remember one of the people speaking talked about a sense of community. And it seems to me like you go down to West Fork Whiskey and there's a little bit of commercial there, and then you got to go a long way in 191st and 31 for some commercial. It seems that the commercial development, the mixed-use development, could be larger to give the residents both here and in some of the surrounding developments where there's no commercial, more of an opportunity to have the commercial center or the mixed-use center become the community center of that quadrant. Because there's really nothing else in there for that. And of course, that becomes 3% tax revenue too, or 2%. So I know you got a little bit more that you can add, but I'm just not sure if it's possible to add even more.
Well, and I don't want to steal staff's thunder, because I know they're getting ready to roll out an amendment for Hortonville. And if you look at the display, I blew up our site. The area with the 7 on it that's colored in that peach color, that's our component of the mixed use. The rest of the mixed use that staff is talking about for Hortonville occupies this other roughly, I would say, 35 acres to 40 acres. So we're going to have there's going to be a node in Hortonville at 206 and Horton Road where our site's just a fraction of what is being examined and planned for by staff. The area where the grain silos are across the street that's adjacent to the Monon, the parcels that are along 206 to that, they're really looking at this area to develop somewhat organically. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but the mixed use component is something that's likely going to be an element that's developed on other parcels over time. We didn't go into the plan and the discussion with staff about saying, here's what we want to do. They came to us and they said, here's what we think Hortonville is going to look like in the future. And we really designed that mixed use piece to be supportive of what was communicated to us as their vision for Hortonville. But it's only a fraction of that space. Ours is only a fraction of the overall.
So what I drove out there to try to find the commercial area of Hortonville in today's world, and I could still be driving trying to find it because there is none.
They're looking at redevelopment of that space.
Okay.
Not to the scale what's happening here in downtown, but at a lesser scale and scope, shorter buildings, not as intense development, but something like that. And again, I'll wait for them to roll
Kevin, is that
out.
something you can share with us at some time?
Yeah, sometime. We will be rolling that out, really in conjunction with the comp plan.
Okay.
Once there's a formal presentation made for the comp plan, that we anticipate having the Hortonville plan available at that time.
Okay.
So in the next month.
We can anticipate to have that kind of alongside this conversation.
Yep.
Is what I hear, just to
Right.
clarify. Great.
That's all I have.
Okay. Further questions and comments from commissioners? Councilor McCarty.
I don't want to speak too much since everyone knows where I stand on this, being against it. I started out being against it for more so, as was described, philosophical reasons, because, again, this number's said constantly that everything improved today, we're going to go up to 100,000 people, which is crazy to fathom. So anything approved going forward is on top of that, and say, you know, it's estimated upwards of 10,000 additional people here within this new Hortonville. So that's obviously a lot to take in, and something I just don't feel we're ready for at this point in time. I do appreciate the presentation, infrastructure-wise. I would like to see more improvements, but we already have so much to do within our community, spring mill, ditch, so on and so forth, before we even contemplate getting out here, unfortunately. That's just how the sprawl's gone. So that's how I started being more philosophical. But then once it was actually presented and I read through the PUD and saw examples and so forth, there were several red flags that they came up to me just out of quality concerns. And then also, add on top of that, yes, 5 home builders, but minimum of 5% and maximum of 60%. So I threw out this number at the last meeting that there could be 70% Lennar product. Well, I wasn't too far off. There could be a 60% Lennar product, which we all know about that. But then after that meeting, more red flags were presented to me where, I don't want to mention any names or anything, but there were builders that messaged me, had meetings that were proposed to be part of this as well, that said that they had quality concerns. And these were builders that I hold in high regard. And so when I hear that, I'm like, whoa, I got to pump the brakes that much more. If it's not just me having concerns looking at the overall concepts, but them who could have potentially been involved with this having concerns, that's quite frightening, actually. So my concerns have evolved from just being philosophical to being quality control concerns. And this could, quite frankly, spiral in the future. I know we're trying to lock it down as much as possible, which is great, due to prior concerns with other PUDs. But we also know how prior projects have gone, and over 10, 15 years, who knows where Westfield will be in 15 years. And as we tack on all this, it's going to be a lot to handle. In terms of the trees, I appreciate, again, all the effort that was presented here this evening. Because of recent issues that we've had with other projects of trees being torn down for water retention, I'm now at the point for projects where no trees should be torn down whatsoever for any water retention. That's just the concerns that have been brought to me from the public. I know as far as residents go here, no one wants this. Now it's adjacent builders not wanting this. And I know that there's several concerns with the council as well if this may or may not even have support. So that's just kind of all of my thinking out loud segments. Again, didn't want to talk too much, but I do appreciate just the overall process, so thank you.
Anything you'd like to say? I didn't want to cut you off.
No,
Okay, very good. Mr. Bunkefist.
Yeah, a few questions. Number one, it's kind of hard to see, and there's a slew of colors on this map. When we're looking at the villages, is it safe to assume that all of those that flank the Monon Trail in that northeast corner up against it are townhomes? Because how some of the lines are cut, it blends like it's maybe a type F. And that's like confirmation on the Monon frontage right there. Yep. So when you zoom in, it looks like that is all type A townhome intention. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay. Perfect. And so then, of course, that'll be alley loaded, so the fronts of those will be facing the Monon. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
So the alley that you see is the narrow strip behind.
Yep.
The
assume
homes
such.
would face the Monon here, and it would face the backside. To add some specificity regarding that Monon Trail frontage, it wouldn't be a situation where, like in Carmel, you have front sidewalks coming out onto the Monon. This would be a preservation of the existing trees that are in the Monon right-of-way with a separate sidewalk that would be in place beyond that, so that it would collect and then only connect to the Monon at a couple of select locations.
Understood. The type C, and I feel like I didn't like this first iteration. I'm still staring at it. That's south of 206th Street. For reference, I think it's the closest property to Chatham Hills.
Just 1 second. Where are we going? Over here?
Right there. Yep, correct. To me, it just feels out of place, right? It's up against Chatham Hills. It's up against what you're showing as type K, which are nice renderings, right? That feels like it's being boxed in just to be boxed in based off the property that's owned. Not necessarily a fan if that'd be 3 to 4 type Ks in lieu of all of the type Cs that's being shown. I'd probably like that a little better, personally.
In the space right here or internal?
Just internal in general, right?
Okay.
I mean, you have
And
what,
the
what I'll call, for lack of better words, again, you have your type K, and then houses directly to the south of that that are reflective of type K, right? And then you're putting what feels like a different use type between the two, and it just feels like it's going to stand out in a negative way to me personally.
And there's an existing church that sits on the parcel here, and then this street is intended to tie in with the street further to the west. So it kind of creates that situation like you see homes facing both sides of an internal street within Hortonville, but we'll definitely take a look at that and report back to you.
If that's the intent of tying it into Hortonville, of course, we've heard staff's iteration of what Hortonville could be, right? I think if that's maybe even a pumping of the brakes to understand what that broader landscape would look like, and then come back and decide maybe something could go there. Don't know, right?
Okay.
But personal opinion. What else? Within the village, I think I mentioned this on the first iteration, and if you could go back to the trail system map, if you don't mind, the Trail Network Plan Exhibit 10. Maybe we just have like different opinions of what a village concept would be, right? But I think as I was looking at some of the permitted use types, 4 of which I think have front-loaded garages permitted within the village. Curious just on, when you're up against trail systems and you're promoting the village, kind of what that would look like versus either really rear-loaded is what I had in my head for, a village connectivity concept.
Yeah, so under the ordinance, 80% would be homes that have alley access, and the ones that don't have alley access are those here that back up to the power line easement. So these are homes that would be, have a garage that faces the street
Okay.
right here, and then just this narrow band here and a narrow band right there.
So anything that's up against easement and/or other utilities, what we're essentially saying would be front-loaded, everything else rear?
Yeah,
Alley
along
loaded.
the perimeter of the site, yes.
Okay, and so there's no side loaded on there at all, I guess?
There are homes that, the front-loaded homes, there's a commitment on the front-loaded homes to have a garage that was set back from the street, so the home would be the predominant image from the street. That's one accommodation, but within this space, those lots are narrower lots. There's not a provision to have a side load garage within that plan. It's not prohibited, but it would be,
Well, that's the question, right, is it's a permitted use under your PUD to have the side loaded. So I guess the distinction in the question is, do you have a matrix in your head of what those two are going to be? Personally liking side loaded more than front loaded in that concept, right? To your point,
On
to
a-
show the house better, but,
well, the accommodation that we made was to set the garage back further from the face of the house, so that it would de-emphasize the garage rather than a side load, which is would require more separation between houses, which would be inconsistent with the alley fed.
understood.
So a setback that pulls the garage back.
Yeah, understood. I agree. In that, in the village concept, you'd agree you're kind of maintaining the density by doing front loaded in lieu of the side loaded. Is
The
that what you're getting
streetscape,
at?
yeah.
Yep, okay. Let me see here, sorry, if I had any other questions. Love the public spaces. I would say on the tree preservation, Victor hit it on the head, and as I'm staring at this as well, I would say it is the hard corner of 206 and Horton, I believe, where there is, especially where you're showing the pond, you kind of have the tie into the Monon corner road. So come down to the southwest corner of that, sorry, John.
Right here?
Down more, right there, that corner of the, yep. Now come over to the left for me where you're tying into Monon corner.
Oh, right here.
Yep, and then down a little bit, that road right there, yep. Staring at the tree preservation opportunities, would be curious if, at least at the drawing I'm looking at, 12 homes, 11 homes, if you could just maintain the entirety of that tree preservation instead of taking out what you're taking out there.
So here,
Correct, yep,
your request would be to not provide these lots.
correct. You have that road tie-in, the road tie-in makes sense, but if it just took you north instead of taking you south, I like that look better with the additional tree preservation opportunities. Let me see. And then I would say the type K, there's, to Victor's point, maybe when I say type K, sorry, big development here, right? But to, again, off of 206th Street, the type K that's up against the type C on opposite sides, right there, yep. Looking at additional tree preservation opportunities along street frontage, if there are any. I like the idea of that being more secluded, and if you can maintain some of that tree front wooded, road front trees, there we go.
Yeah.
I'd like that better. And then I think lastly, you hit it on the head, love the public spaces, love what we're doing. Not the biggest fan of the lack of diversity of the homestead size. I know the whole goal of this is to be diverse, but it's a lot of the same of what I feel like we've seen already. And so if we could get even more narrow on when, you provided a wonderful exhibit on, type A, type B, type C, if there's a way to narrow down that even more to understand what is actually likely in our next workshop versus what is not likely, right? I know the whole point of this is to make sure the houses within each type is different than the one next to it. But just want to understand that a little more, because again, I have concern on the builder diversity as well. With that, I'll stop talking. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments from commissioners? Mr. Horkay?
I'll make a couple of comments. I really don't have anything new to add because Dr. Keene talked a lot about what I was similarly concerned about. And I just want to kind of emphasize the surprise from staff that I knew nothing about as far as some additional yet to roll out plan for Hortonville that will enhance commercial opportunities there. I'm looking at the map a lot. Seems like there's a lot of little parcels, and I'm not sure what the goal is and how it's going to be handled by community development and the economic development folks. But if there's actually going to be something that will further enhance the commercial opportunities beyond what's in this plan, then I'll anxiously await hearing that. But I did want to emphasize that at least that little hatched area that could go one way or the other, I I think it needs to be part of the commercial, not part of something else, because I had a concern about making certain there's enough for a lot of people to go to, not just those that are in the general vicinity. There were a lot of exhibits to go through. Quite honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my arms around a lot of this stuff. By the next workshop, I may have some further comments. I don't have too much else to add now. Victor characterized this as something that nobody wants. I'm not part of that group that he was characterizing as not wanting this. I think this has got a lot of good going for it, and I think it's very interesting, but it is huge, so we do need to be very thorough about what we do here. So I will possibly in January have more to throw on the table for discussion purposes, and hopefully maybe by that point in time we'll have had some idea of what this additional Hortonville grand plan is to try to encourage some other things to happen around that corner, because it is kind of a fun little corner with the trail going through. It is something that I've been on the trail a number of times, driven 206th Street, and it seems like there could be some good opportunities even before this development came along to try to kickstart it all. So I'm looking forward to a lot of what we're talking about here. And I'll stop rambling now because I'm not sure, like I said, that I had that much else that I wanted to add, but I want to emphasize support of some of the things that have already come up.
Mr. Khan.
I do appreciate the preservation of some trees, and I do agree with some fellow commissioners about furthering that objective. I also do believe we are going to expand one way or another in Westfield, and it's about how do we thoughtfully do that. And so while I don't agree with capping, to certain degrees, I think that we should have expansion, but I also believe it should be thoughtful and with quality in mind. So, as you continue on your presentation, I would like you to speak to the quality of, what you plan on doing and how you plan on going about it, because this is something that is so large, it's going to be impactful for indefinitely, and we got to make sure we get it right. That's it, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mooney.
Okay, when I look at Exhibit 9B in Horton Square, I just want to understand, can the rooftop living, the optional area, can that be on top of, if you had 3 floors, would that be on top of the 3rd floor as well? Or is that just if there's 2 floors, there could be optional rooftop on top of that?
It could be either one.
Okay.
It could be it could be a 2-story building with rooftop above that, or a 3-story building with rooftop in that mixed-use area.
Okay, appreciate that clarification. And maybe I looked over, I've been studying this. Can you walk through, specific to that Horton Square as well, just philosophically what we're thinking about parking? So if you think you've got living units on top of the, 2nd and 3rd story on some of that, it looks like in some of the renderings, we've
I don't have
got
the
street
imagery
parking.
queued up of the buildings,
Yeah,
but this is just a general layout. You see the buildings positioned along the street. So the ordinance requires that buildings are pulled up to the street. The ordinance specifies that parking has to be beside or behind, so it can't be forward of the building. And then it also indicates that it demands mixed use if there's going to be multifamily use in that space, that it can only be on the 2nd floor or above. So the layout that you see here, this would be buildings with parking positioned internal to the site, parking positioned internal, buildings along the street frontages here and here. I believe I think this may have been a street that we added in the mix as we move forward, based on staff's recommendation to have streets aligned and blocks created. But again, building positioned along the street with parking internal to the site.
okay. I was trying to match it up with the renderings.
Yeah, well, some of those renderings don't represent like parking on it's the building character and quality
Yeah.
versus the site plan and layout.
Yeah,
from a
understood.
Site plan perspective.
No, that helps.
Further comments? Mrs. Carlson.
Yeah, I have one. I have to agree with Dr. McKean that just does not seem like a lot of commercial for the amount of homes there. So is that size designated by ordinance, or is there a reason it's so small? To me, it looks small.
So there's 7.5 acres that are planned within that peach-colored area. And again, it's a fraction of what may be developed over time. So give you an example, the area that Skender's developing on is about 5 acres. And that Skender piece is one component of the area south of 32 and north of the Midland that the city's creating those mixed-use elements. This is the same thing. This is one piece of what an area would be at this corner, 7.5 acres of what will be potentially similar to the design of other pieces as they would be aggregated and collected and redeveloped over time that are part of Hortonville today. Doesn't mean that it has to happen. The city's just expanding and establishing a vision. And then do they, similar to what's happened downtown, does the city bring an idea to different developers to come in and be part of that plan in different spaces? That decision won't be made by us, but this isn't intended to serve, the commercial's not intended to serve exclusively the residents of Ironstone. The commercial's intended to serve the broader community, both folks who live in Chatham, other areas of the community will be patrons of these businesses, and it won't just be this parcel, it'll likely be others in the future that you'll see that are other parts of Hortonville.
Okay, so the next question I have is, what is the tax burden on the surrounding residents? Or is there, or how does that work? And then I'm reading through these letters, and there's not one person in favor of this, Ironstone, as it is now, like, designed today. But I think maybe what they need to do is understand that it's not going to happen like tomorrow. It's a process. So what's that process look like from start to finish? Is it a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan?
It's likely after we begin construction. So let's say, for instance, that review by the Plan Commission and Council, it results in an approval, and that would happen in the first quarter or second quarter of 2026. Construction plans are starting to put it underway for the first sections. It's likely that the commercial area is on the back end of a 10 to 12-year period after that commences. So a decade from now, when there's actually an end user and a design for that space, we could be back in front of the Plan Commission with, here's a development plan for that space. The idea is, here's any potential adjustments that need to be made to that to accommodate that particular use in a decade. But what we're doing today is establishing the guardrails for how it could be developed over time.
Further comments or questions from commissioners? I've been writing a lot, so I'm gonna say a lot now. I just wanted to make sure everyone else got to go first. I'll make a couple of comments, and then I'll make some specific questions / requests, or ask some questions. I do want to thank you and Paul and the team for I think a lot of the intentionality that you've brought to us tonight. Obviously, this is a plan that's been discussed for quite some time, and we don't have the opportunity as a city to get this wrong. We got one shot to get this area right, and it's going to be something that, if this is approved, could be a model for other nodes like it in the future in Westfield. I appreciate your intentionality, especially with the neighbors specifically, in trying to do right by those that live out there. I know it's not always perfect. You do what you can, and I appreciate the level of detail you've shared with us tonight as to what you've tried to do. Now, there still may be other asks and questions, and folks may or may not be happy with what is offered, but I appreciate you going through that process. I appreciate the detail that you provided with us tonight. In the foundation of the plan, obviously, we have at least another workshop and maybe potentially a second one before we get to a recommendation vote. And so I know there'll be more to come as we get more and more granular. I'm also very happy with the level of intentionality that you're working on tree preservation. I think that's been a hot topic here recently in the city of Westfield, and so greatly appreciate that, as well as the amenities and the trail system. The 14 plus miles, I think, is great for the area. With that, I wanted to start on the umbrella positive note. One concern I think I share, and I think I've heard this not just from the commission, but from members of the public, as well as I know where some city council folks are at, related to quality and to the percentage of builders per section. I was kind of stunned to hear the 60% number. I know that we're not privy to those conversations early on, and I hope that's a point of discussion we can have, as well as the quality of homes that are built in each of these sections. I'm not nearly as familiar as some others on this board with builder by builder, so I don't want to make any comments related to different builders, but definitely want to have that conversation. And I know that Councilor Herron specifically emailed me about the different types of homes and the designs, and I know that's in the public record that I'm sure you can view if you haven't spoken to him already. I want to take a look at this map here, if you could, John. It's the northwest section of the lakes. It was that little outlier piece, I don't know what to call it, but yeah, right there. So looking at the trail map, you don't have to bring that one up, I've got it here. I think one of the questions I had for staff, and I was going to ask you tonight, is there doesn't seem to be, other than to the north, getting on 206th Street, there's no connection to the larger trail there to the southeast. Is that intentional, or is that being contemplated still, or is there a reason why? Maybe there's a good reason. Staff had provided a thought.
If
but
it's not on this trail exhibit, it'll be added in that there would be a pedestrian connection between these 2 points to connect these residents here over to the amenity.
Okay,
But the street connection was removed,
sure, that's fine. But there is going to be some sort of pedestrian access to that.
100%.
Beautiful.
Both by sidewalk and trail.
Sure, great. Because it obviously kind of feels just like what Mr. Bunkefist was talking about to the southeast. It's because you own the property and the way it's connected, it kind of feels like an outlier, but I think that being able to connect it like that would certainly help. So glad to hear that. Let's see, sticking to trails, I'm kind of trying to put these in groupings. I didn't write them in groupings. On the trail map, especially kind of in this zone here going up towards what will be donated to the school, the legend shows both a mixed-use trail parallel to a golf cart trail. Are those different trails parallel to each other?
Yes.
And can you give, and maybe you don't know, so the answer is, I don't know, we'll talk about it later. I'm trying to envision what that looks like. I guess the one I think about the most, not that you would put golf carts on it, but the Monon in Midtown Carmel, where they have the walking path and the bike path that are kind of separate. What's kind of the concept, do you think there? Or maybe you don't have an answer.
There isn't an answer today, but I'll get you more information.
Great.
But it would be that they're adjacent to one another, so we reduce potential conflicts.
Yep.
With the exception of free will.
It's all you can't contemplate that in an ordinance. Let's see. This is just a note. I think I mentioned this before for staff, not necessarily for you, but I also read it in Councilor Herron's comments. The trail going under 6 points, just north of 206, having some sort of bridge or tunnel contemplation over time. Let's see. I want to make sure I mark these off. Got that one, that one, that one, that one. Mixed use, golf cart, got that. Down in your commercial zone, if we could, I guess I really don't need the map of it. The streets that, so obviously the commercial zone, you said is 7+ acres, but obviously kind of knowing what we have to do with it, there's a good portion of it that's going to have to go to parking. So there's not going to be a whole lot of, there's not going to be 7 acres of building. There's obviously going to be some parking space too. And I guess I would be concerned about that if there wasn't going to be such a grand plan coming before us at some point on the Hortonville expansion. So I guess I'm less worried about that. But the streets around the zone that you're building specifically, is there going to be street parking there?
It would be permitted, but it's not specified.
Okay.
And what we were asked to come up with when the first development plan is filed for that space, staff had, and it's written in the ordinance that we would provide a streetscape plan for the entire district, so that it would be determined at that time what the cross sections look like in the street sections.
Okay.
It just depends. I don't think the staff has finished their analysis of what they would envision Horton Road to be, other than not 55 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Let's see, so I've mentioned street parking that. So that, for now, kind of ends my comments and questions related to that. But I appreciate, again, all the work that's gone through with this. Like I said, I want to reiterate to everybody that if this goes through, we have one shot at getting it right. And I appreciate your partnership in that, what you presented to us tonight, and I know there'll be a lot more discussion to come. So thank you very much for all of that.
Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. And I assume nothing else. I don't want to be the, okay, Councilor McCarty would like to
Sorry,
make
one last thing. When the map was over the southwest corner of 206 and 6 Points, it reminded me of some residents that have reached out to me. It's very concerning that residents are already receiving letters to have easement purchased from them. So I had said to them that I would mention it at the meeting. I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget. You know, this project hasn't even been through the process yet, still has a long road, as was alluded to. And for the powers that be reaching out to neighbors to secure easement, I just don't see that as being right, because there's just no need to do that. Don't necessarily warrant a response, but I just wanted to put that out into the atmosphere, because I know that's a concern of several residents, so thank you.
Thank you very much. No other, I'm sorry, Mr. Bunkenfest.
If not already provided, perhaps for the next workshop as well, for the village concept and even the rest of it as well, where you do have the front-loaded garages up against trail systems, if you could show rear elevations of the homes as well that are adjacent to the trail systems, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Anyone else? I tried to cut you loose. Seeing and hearing none. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. Okay, with that, we have a number of items continued to a future meeting, including the comp plan, Harmony, LPH, and Sugar Leaf. If there are no questions about any of that, we'll move to our reports and comments. Plan commission members to each other. Any comments to be made? Seeing and hearing none. City Council liaison, Councilor McCarty.
Yeah, since I've started to email you all my updates, so just to touch on some highlights. We swore in 5 new Westfield police officers, so that was awesome to see them, their families filling the room. And then one additional item that I wanted to, two. Heads up for everyone that might not have seen the email, the Town Road Crossing PUD, that was continued, so that has not received a final vote yet. And then, if you might not know, the Preserve at Cool Creek annexation. That's a unique proposal where it's going to be annexed in 5 phases, starting on 191st, looping down, then coming back up to 191st to the southwest corner of Grassy Branch and 191st. This is, again, unique because it's a straight zone project that was technically approved because of the zoning that already carries with the land, but also it's already been at Plat Committee last March 2024. So it's kind of just a unique case study of all the different types of development that can go on in Westfield and how annexation works and this and that. So if you have any further questions on that particular proposal, please let me know. But that is all. Thank you.
Questions for Councilor McCarty? Seeing and hearing none. Thank you for continuing to provide your report, especially by email. It's very helpful. Board of Zoning Appeals, Dr. Keene.
Exciting meeting. We approved a variance for a barn on a property on Fremont Moore Road. It went into the encroachment area to avoid tearing down a lot of trees, and the hills and everything made construction difficult. So that was our exciting meeting.
Barnes. Excellent. Plat Committee.
We didn't meet since our last meeting, and I was of the understanding that we were done till next year. But today I got an email, and Kevin, tell me if you know, I got a request for availability for a meeting next Monday. Is there some agenda item that's, no, you don't know? Okay, we may or may not meet again this year,
But there's a possibility.
Yeah,
It's not zero.
Yeah, I
It's
said I'm
not
available for the meeting, but actually I'm not available 10 o'clock on Thursday to review the agenda. So somebody else, like Justin Wiley, will have to take care of that if we are in fact going to have to address some business.
Very good. Community Development Department.
No, so this is our last meeting of the year, right?
Yes,
So,
that is correct.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody. Enjoy some time with your loved ones if you're able to do that. Thank you for your work this year. We've had a we've got a lot that we've accomplished, so we'll look forward to another great year next year. But yeah, just a little bit awkward with the scheduling. I think we covered it last time, but we will not have a meeting the first week of January. We will move our first Plan Commission meeting to the Wednesday after the council meeting, so that will be January the 14th. And that'll be our normal public hearing meeting. The following week, which will be shifted to a Tuesday because of the Monday holiday, we'll have our workshop meeting, so. Which is the 20th? It's the 20th.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, probably. We can talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, there was enough here that it
12.
would have been uncomfortable tonight.
Yeah.
Whether or not we have that continued level, I guess, will depend.
Well,
We
and
can
there'll
think
be
about it.
other items probably on that agenda as well, so.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a question I guess we can talk about if we want to.
Talk about it off.
Do it here again, or.
Guess we won't have any. Will we have any like RDC or anybody up against us?
Let me look real quick and see if.
So we would have to do it later again. I think I'm indifferent.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is.
Especially if it's on. Yeah. Okay.
As we're getting into Sugarleaf and Ironstone and the comp plan and so many of these heavy hitters.
Yeah. January, we may want bigger spaces because we have big ticket items that are all going to come at us at the same time. But I think we can talk about that offline and figure out what's best for our space and for allowing the residents to make sure that they're here.
Yeah, it does look like there's an RDC meeting in this building at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. We can have that conversation.
But otherwise, thanks, everybody.
Thank you to staff. I know not everybody's here, but any that may be online or those, thank you so much for your work for this year. It's been a pleasure to be your president this year, and hope to have the opportunity to do it again next year. But thank you all for your work. It's been a great year, and there's a lot more to come next year. To all my colleagues, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and to those here that are left. With that, would there be a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by,
Second.
I think, Bunkefist and then McCarty. Moved and seconded, McCarty first, then Bunkefist. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:51 p.m.